The notification on my phone was less of a gentle chime and more of a digital shriek, a single line of text that managed to curdle the quiet Saturday morning air. Your Amex Platinum statement is now available. Current balance, $47,382.19. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, the numbers seeming to float, unreal and malicious. $47,000. I, Jamal Hayes, a 35-year-old black man who, according to my in-laws, was a struggling freelance graphic designer, barely worth the air he breathed, was looking at a bill that could represent a down payment on a house. And I knew exactly who had spent it. My wife, Simone. Simone Hayes, my wife of 4 years, was a 33-year-old black woman whose beauty was as undeniable as it was, lately, a weapon. Her caramel-toned skin was flawless, her hair a cascade of professionally installed box braids that fell to her waist, and her deep-set brown eyes, the same eyes I had fallen in love with, now often held a flicker of something I couldn't quite name. Pity, perhaps, or embarrassment. The charge was for her annual girls' trip, a lavish affair that had escalated each year, a trip she took with friends whose husbands were, in her mother's words, actual providers. I had never stopped her. I had never said a word about the mounting costs. I had simply paid the bill, my silence a currency she and her family had long ago mistaken for weakness. But $47,000 wasn't just a number. It was a statement. It was a summary of 4 years of escalating disrespect, a final declarative insult delivered via a credit card statement. And as I stood there in the kitchen of our modest apartment, the one her mother called quaintly pathetic, I made a decision. Simone had taken her trip. Now I would take mine, a solo trip, straight to my lawyer's office. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our stories. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Are you in Atlanta, Houston, London, or maybe Lagos? I love seeing our global community. Now let's get back to Jamal and see how this unfolds. The architect of my slow-burning rage was, of course, my mother-in-law, Eleanor Vance. Eleanor was a 60-year-old black woman who carried herself with the imperial grace of a queen ruling a very small, very judgmental kingdom. Her rich dark skin was impeccably smooth, a testament to expensive skin care and a life free of manual labor. Her hair was a crown of thick, silver-streaked locks, always styled in an elegant updo, and her eyes, a shade darker than Simone's, were perpetually narrowed in assessment. She judged everyone and everything by a single metric: monetary value. From the moment Simone introduced me, Eleanor's disdain was a palpable force in any room we shared. She saw my simple, unbranded clothing, my quiet demeanor, and my chosen profession, and she wrote me off as a liability, a charity case her daughter had saddled the family with. Her husband, Robert Vance, was her willing second-in-command. He was 62, a tall, imposing black man with deep brown skin, a neatly trimmed graying beard that framed his strong jaw, and a permanent air of disappointment whenever he looked at me. He was the CEO of Vance Innovations, a mid-level tech hardware company he'd inherited from his own father. He considered himself a titan of industry, a self-made man who conveniently forgot the silver spoon he was born with. His favorite pastime was giving me unsolicited, condescending career advice. "You know, son," he'd say, patting my shoulder a little too hard at family gatherings, "there's no shame in admitting that art thing isn't working out. I have a mailroom position opening up. Honest work." He'd say it with a straight face, a feigned look of fatherly concern, while my brother-in-law snickered in the corner. That brother-in-law was Marcus Vance. At 31, Marcus was the heir apparent, a younger, smarmier version of his father. He had his mother's lighter, golden-brown complexion and a face that was perpetually arranged in a smug smirk. His fade was always surgically precise, his designer tracksuits always the latest season. He was a vice president of marketing at his father's company, a title that meant he spent most of his days forwarding emails and taking 3-hour lunches. His primary contribution to family events was to make thinly veiled jokes about my income. "Hey, Jamal," he'd called out at last year's Thanksgiving, holding up a bottle of champagne. "Want me to teach you how to pronounce Veuve Clicquot? You'll need it if you ever want to sit at the big boys' table." Simone would always flinch. A flicker of discomfort would cross her beautiful face. She'd squeeze my hand under the table and whisper, "Just ignore them, baby. They don't mean it." But they did mean it, and her weak, whispered defenses were like trying to stop a tidal wave with a paper towel. Her apologies came later, in the privacy of our car or our bed. "I'm so sorry, Jamal. My mom is just... You know how she is. She's just worried about me." Worried. That was the word she used to sanitize their cruelty. They weren't being cruel. They were being concerned. They weren't belittling me. They were trying to motivate me. Over 4 years, I had listened to her excuses, and I had watched as their definition of concern hollowed out a space inside my marriage. The $47,000 trip wasn't an isolated incident. It was the peak of a mountain of slights. 3 years ago, for our first anniversary, I had used my skills to design and code a beautiful interactive website that chronicled our relationship. Photos, videos, inside jokes, a digital love story. I was proud of it. When I showed it to her and her family, Eleanor had peered at the screen through her designer glasses. "That's creative, Jamal," she'd said, her tone dripping with condescension. "But you can't pay a mortgage with creativity. Robert, show him the stock portfolio you bought Simone for her birthday." Robert had then produced a thick leather-bound folder detailing stocks worth $100,000, and the lesson was clear. My heartfelt, personal gift was worthless. My labor was not real labor. 2 years ago, at Christmas, the family did a Secret Santa. The spending limit was $1,000. I was assigned Marcus. Knowing he was a sneakerhead, I spent weeks tracking down a pair of rare limited edition Jordans, a collaboration with an artist I knew he admired. It cost me nearly double the limit, but I wanted to make an effort, to connect with him on his level. When he opened the box, his eyes widened. For a split second, I saw genuine excitement. Then he caught his mother's eye. The smirk returned. "Wow, Jamal," he'd said loudly, holding them up. "You must have skipped a lot of meals to afford these. Appreciate the sacrifice." The family laughed, a polite, cruel titter. My gift was twisted into a symbol of my supposed poverty. Simone had spent the car ride home crying, not for my humiliation, but for her own embarrassment. "Why did you have to spend so much, Jamal? You know it just makes them talk." I had been punished for my generosity. The final straw before this trip had been 6 months ago, at Robert's 62nd birthday party. It was held at a lavish country club, the kind of place where the air itself felt expensive. I wore a simple but well-made, dark suit. Simone had begged me to let her buy me something flashier, something with a label, but I refused. We were standing with a group of her parents' friends, all of them black, all of them dripping with the casual arrogance of old money. One of the men, a portly real estate developer named Harold, with skin the color of dark chocolate and a booming laugh, turned to me. "So, Jamal, Eleanor tells me you're in the arts. What's your medium? Finger painting?" Before I could answer, Eleanor glided in, a glass of champagne in her hand. "Oh, be nice, Harold. Jamal is very passionate. He makes things on his computer. For websites, I think." She said the word websites like it was something you scrape off the bottom of your shoe. It's a shame, really. Simone has such a brilliant head for business, but she's saddled with, well, you know, a passion project. She smiled, a dazzling, predatory smile that didn't reach her eyes. Thank God, her father and I have enough to make sure she'll never have to worry. We consider Jamal our most expensive charity case. The words hung in the air. charity case. It wasn't a joke. It was a branding, a label she had been trying to stick on me for years, and now she had said it out loud, in public, in front of everyone. I looked at Simone. She was staring at her drink, her jaw tight, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. She said nothing, not a word. She didn't defend me. She didn't walk away. She stood there, silent and complicit, as her mother publicly castrated me. In that moment, something inside me didn't break. It cooled. It hardened into a diamond-sharp point of clarity. I had been patient. I had been loving. I had been accommodating. I had endured the endless parade of insults, the patronizing advice, the public humiliations, all for the sake of a woman who wouldn't even stand up for me in a room full of her parents' friends. I had been waiting for her to choose me. I had spent 4 years waiting. And in her silence at that country club, she had made her choice. So, when I saw the $47,000 bill, I didn't feel anger. I felt relief. It was the excuse I didn't know I was waiting for. It was the starting gun, the trip to Dubai, the first-class tickets, the penthouse suite at the Burj Al Arab, the photos she posted on Instagram with captions like #LivingMyBestLife and #Blessed. It was all evidence, not of her happiness, but of her profound, staggering ignorance of the reality of her own life. She and her family had built their identities on a foundation of money and status. They had no idea that I was the one who owned the foundation. I picked up my car keys from the bowl by the door. Simone was due back this evening, tanned, laden with shopping bags, and ready to tell me stories of a life I supposedly couldn't provide. She would expect me to be quietly resentful, perhaps a little passive-aggressive about the bill. She would be prepared for the argument we'd had a dozen times before. She was not prepared for what was coming. My first stop wasn't the lawyer's office. It was my office. My real office. The place my in-laws imagined I worked was probably a cluttered corner of our apartment, littered with coffee cups and takeout containers. The reality was a 20-minute drive from the city, a sleek 3-building campus of black glass and steel nestled in a grove of preserved oak trees. A discreet, brushed metal sign at the entrance read Aura Design Labs. No big, flashy logo. We didn't need one. Our clients knew who we were. Apple, Google, Mercedes-Benz, Nike. We were the ghost in the machine, the architects of the user experiences and brand aesthetics that defined modern luxury and technology. I wasn't a freelance graphic designer. I was the co-founder, majority owner, and chief creative officer of one of the most exclusive and profitable design firms in the world. I parked my unassuming 10-year-old sedan, another prop in my carefully constructed life of mediocrity, in my reserved spot, labeled simply Founder. I walked through the automatic glass doors into a lobby that was more art gallery than office. A massive, slowly undulating digital sculpture I had designed myself covered one wall. The receptionist, a sharp young black woman named Keisha, with a vibrant purple tapered cut and warm brown eyes, looked up from her desk. "Mr. Hayes, good morning. We weren't expecting you on a Saturday." "Morning, Keisha. Just need to pick up a few things. Is David in his office?" "He is. He's been on a warpath about the NX7 project all morning," she said with a grin. I smiled. "Sounds about right." I took the private elevator to the top floor. The doors opened directly into a sprawling corner office with a panoramic view of the entire campus and the city skyline beyond. Sitting behind a desk made from a single piece of reclaimed redwood was my business partner, David Chen. David was 36, a brilliant black man with smooth ebony skin and hair in freshly twisted locks that brushed his shoulders. He had a mind for numbers and strategy that was as sharp as my eye for design. We'd met in college, 2 broke kids with a shared vision, and built this empire from a dorm room. He was the only person in the world, aside from my lawyer and my accountant, who knew the full extent of my wealth and the reason for my double life. He looked up as I walked in, his intense focus softening. "Jamal, what's up, man? I thought you were taking the weekend." "Change of plans," I said, slumping into one of the plush leather chairs opposite his desk. I slid my phone across the polished wood, the credit card statement still on the screen. David glanced at it, his eyebrows shooting up. $47,000? Let me guess. The annual We're Better Than Your Husband tour? I nodded, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. This year's theme was Dubai. David leaned back, lacing his fingers behind his head. He was a man of few words, but his eyes were expressive. Right now, they held a familiar mix of sympathy and frustration. He had never understood my patience. 4 years, Jay, he said softly. 4 years you've been playing this game. I've seen you sit there at those dinners while they talk to you, like you're something they scraped off their shoe. For what? When are you going to tell her? I'm not, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I'm not going to tell her. I'm going to show her. And them. Today's the day. A slow smile spread across David's face. He knew what that meant. He stood up and walked over to a sleek, biometric-secured cabinet. He pressed his thumb to the scanner, and it clicked open. He pulled out a thick black portfolio. This was my real life, bound in leather. If you're already seeing where this is going, hit that like button right now. And comment below. What do you think Jamal should do? Should they reveal the truth or keep watching? Let me know your prediction. Now, what happens next changes everything. David placed the portfolio on the desk and opened it. Inside were the documents that constituted my hidden kingdom. My personal net worth statement, which, as of the last quarterly review, hovered around $2.3 billion. The ownership deeds for Aura Design Labs, showing my 67% controlling stake. The portfolio of my private holding company, Hayes Equity, which managed my investments. And nestled within that portfolio was the file that was about to become the centerpiece of my life's new act. Vance Innovations, David said, tapping a perfectly manicured finger on the folder. Still can't believe you did this. I looked at the file. 3 years ago, when Robert Vance's company was struggling, on the verge of bankruptcy after a series of bad product launches, I had seen an opportunity. Through a series of shell corporations and third-party investment firms, my holding company, Hayes Equity, began buying up their debt. Then we started acquiring their stock on the open market. It was cheap, almost worthless. Robert was too proud and too incompetent to see the corporate raid happening in slow motion. He was too busy lecturing me about the mailroom to notice the wolf buying up his farm. Within 18 months, Hayes Equity, and by extension me, had acquired a 51% controlling interest in Vance Innovations. I owned my father-in-law's company. He was the CEO, but he was, for all intents and purposes, my employee. An employee who had no idea who his boss was. He called me a passion project 6 months ago, I said, my voice low. He told me my work wasn't honest work, all while cashing a paycheck from a company that only exists because my passion project is funding it. David shook his head, a look of awe on his face. Poetic justice, my friend. So what's the plan? You call a board meeting? Fire him? That's part of it, I said. But it's bigger than that. It's the whole family. They've built their entire world on this illusion of superiority. I'm going to pull the plug on the illusion. I pointed to another file in the portfolio. Eleanor's Investments. David grinned. Ah, yes, the genius stock picker. Eleanor was famous in their social circle for her shrewd investments. She loved to brag about her golden touch. What she didn't know was that 2 years ago, her exclusive high-yield investment fund had been quietly acquired by a larger asset management group. A group owned by Hayes Equity. Her personal financial advisor, a man she adored and trusted implicitly, now reported to a board that I controlled. I had been approving her trades for 2 years. I had access to every penny she thought she had. And then there's the house, I said. This was the part that even David found a little diabolical. The Grand Vance family home, the sprawling 6-bedroom mansion where I had endured countless humiliations, was a rental. They had lost the house in a bad investment deal a decade ago, but were too proud to admit it. They rented it back from the new owner to keep up appearances. And last year, when the property came up for a private sale, I bought it. Through a property management LLC, of course. For the last 12 months, the rent check Robert Vance wrote every month had been deposited into an account that belonged to me. The man who called me a charity case was paying me rent to live in his own home. "You're a cold man, Jamal Hayes," David said, but he was laughing. "A cold, brilliant, patient man. So what do you need from me?" "I need copies of everything," I said, tapping the portfolio. Ownership docs for Vance Innovations, the management agreement for Eleanor's investment firm, the deed and lease agreement for the house on 452 Willow Creek Lane. And I need you to schedule an emergency virtual board meeting for Vance Innovations for 9 p.m. tonight. The only agenda item is the review of the CEO's position. David's smile vanished, replaced by a look of deadly seriousness. He nodded. "Consider it done. Anything else?" "Yeah," I said, standing up. "Call security for the Vance Innovations building. Tell them the CEO, Robert Vance, is to be denied entry effective immediately. His access codes are to be revoked. And Marcus Vance, too. VP of Marketing. Revoke his access as well." "Tonight?" David asked, his eyes wide. "Tonight," I confirmed. "They're having a welcome home dinner for Simone. I plan on delivering the news in person." I left David to his work and drove to my next stop. My lawyer's office was in a downtown skyscraper that gleamed in the midday sun. My lawyer was Arthur Wellington, a 65-year-old black man who was one of the most feared divorce and corporate attorneys in the state. He had skin the color of rich mahogany, a bald head he kept polished to a shine, and eyes that had seen every form of human treachery. He wore impeccably tailored suits and had a voice as smooth and deep as a cello. He was the one who had helped me structure the acquisitions, the shell companies, the entire web of my secret life. He was also the one who had drafted my prenuptial agreement. "Jamal," he said, rising from behind his massive oak desk as I entered his office. "I received your message. I take it the day has finally come." His office smelled of old books and money. "The day has come, Arthur," I confirmed, taking a seat. "The trip," he guessed. $47,000, I said. Arthur let out a low whistle. "She is her mother's daughter. A shame. So we are proceeding with Plan A." "Plan A," I confirmed. "The dissolution of the marriage, and the activation of all related corporate and real estate clauses." For the next hour, we went over the documents David was currently printing for me. We reviewed the prenup Simone had signed without a second thought. Eleanor had insisted on it, convinced she was protecting her daughter from a gold-digging artist. The irony was exquisite. The prenup was ironclad. It stated that all assets acquired prior to the marriage, and any businesses or income derived from those pre-existing assets, remained my sole property. Since Aura Design Labs was founded 5 years before I even met Simone, that meant everything. Vance Innovations, Eleanor's investment fund, the house, was mine and mine alone. Simone was entitled to half of what was in our joint checking account, a grand total of about $8,000, and that was it. "She will fight it," Arthur said, peering at me over his spectacles. "Her mother will hire the best lawyers she thinks she can afford." "Let her," I said. "They can't fight facts, Arthur. They can't fight these." I gestured to the space on the desk where the documents would soon lie. "I'm not doing this to be cruel. I'm doing it to be clear. They built their world on a lie, and I'm just turning on the lights." "And your wife?" Arthur asked gently. "You understand that this will end your marriage. There is no coming back from this." I thought of Simone's face at the country club, the silent, tearful complicity. I thought of the years of excuses, the way she prioritized her parents' feelings over my dignity. I loved the woman I thought she was, the woman she might have been if she hadn't been poisoned by her family's toxic obsession with status. But that woman was gone. Or perhaps she had never existed at all. I know, I said, my voice heavy. I've been mourning my marriage for a long time, Arthur. Tonight is just the funeral. I left his office with a slim, leather-bound folder containing my entire arsenal. The originals were secure with Arthur. These were just the copies, the messengers. I drove home, my heart a strange mix of dread and exhilarating resolve. The game was over. The board was set for the final move. Simone's flight was scheduled to land at 6 p.m. Her parents were hosting a dinner in her honor at 7:30. I was expected to be there, to sit at their table and listen to tales of Dubai, to smile and nod while they marveled at a lifestyle they believed I could never provide. And I would be there. I wouldn't miss it for the world. When Simone walked through the door, she was glowing. Her skin was a shade darker from the Dubai sun, and she was wearing a flowing white dress that made her look like a goddess. She dropped half a dozen shopping bags from Dior, Chanel, and Gucci onto the floor and threw her arms around my neck. "Baby, I missed you," she said, kissing me. It felt different, distant. "Welcome home," I said, my voice even. "How was the trip?" "Oh, Jamal, it was unbelievable," she gushed, pulling away to start unpacking her treasures. "You wouldn't even believe the hotels, the shopping. We went on a desert safari in a G-Wagon. You should have seen it." I paid for it, I thought. I saw the bill. "Sounds amazing," I said. "You must be tired. Mom and Dad are expecting us at 7:30. "I know. I'm just going to take a quick shower and get changed," she said, disappearing into the bedroom. "Don't be late. You know how Mom gets." I knew exactly how her mom gets. We're about to reach the moment you've been waiting for. If this story has you on the edge of your seat, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this with someone who needs to see karma in action. Because what Jamal does next, Eleanor and her family never saw it coming. We arrived at 452 Willow Creek Lane at exactly 7:30 p.m. The Vance mansion was lit up, every window glowing with warm, expensive light. The manicured lawn was pristine. It was a beautiful house. My beautiful house. As we walked up the stone pathway, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The anxiety was gone, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. Eleanor opened the door, dressed in a silk caftan that probably cost more than my car. "Simone, darling," she cried, enveloping her daughter in a hug while barely glancing at me. "You look divine. A little sun does a girl good. Jamal." She said my name like it was an afterthought. Robert and Marcus were in the living room, a grand space with a 2-story ceiling and a massive fireplace. Robert was holding a glass of scotch. Marcus was scrolling on his phone. "There's my girl," Robert boomed, kissing Simone on the cheek. "Tell us everything. Did you spend all of my money?" He laughed, and Marcus joined in. "I tried, Daddy," Simone said, playing along. The dinner table was set for a feast. Crystal glasses, polished silver, plates with a gold trim. Eleanor was a firm believer that presentation was everything. We sat down, and the performance began. For the next hour, Simone regaled them with stories of her trip, the 7-star hotels, the infinity pools, the personal shoppers. Eleanor, Robert, and Marcus listened with rapt attention, interjecting with questions and comments designed to highlight the sheer expense of it all, each one a subtle jab at me. "A personal suite at the Burj Al Arab. Marvelous," Eleanor said. "That's what real success allows for, Simone. The freedom to experience the best of the world." "Must be nice," Marcus chimed in, looking directly at me. "My idea of a vacation is trying to find a parking spot at the public beach." I just ate my food. I said nothing. I let them build the stage. I let them arrange the lighting. My silence, as always, was their fuel. They saw it as my acceptance of my lowly place in their family hierarchy. Tonight, they would learn it was the quiet hum of a bomb counting down. Finally, during a lull in the conversation as the dessert was being served, a ridiculously complex chocolate lava cake, Eleanor turned her full attention to me. It was time for the main event. "Jamal," she began, her voice syrupy sweet. "Now that Simone has had her little adventure, I think it's time we had a serious conversation about your future, about your contributions to this marriage." "Mom, please," Simone started, a flicker of her old discomfort showing. "No, Simone," Eleanor said, holding up a hand. "This is important. Your husband is 35 years old. The time for passion projects is over. Robert and we've been more than generous. We've supported your lifestyle. We've made sure you want for nothing, because we love you. But this arrangement is not sustainable. You're living off our hard work, Jamal. You're a burden on this family." There it was. Not charity case this time, but burden. A new label for the collection. I placed my fork down, gently on my plate. I took a sip of water. I looked around the table, meeting each of their gazes. Eleanor's, smug and righteous. Robert's, stern and condescending. Marcus's, smirking and cruel. And Simone's, pained and pleading, begging me with her eyes to just take it, to just endure it one more time. "You're right, Eleanor," I said, my voice calm and clear in the suddenly silent room. "It's time we had a serious conversation. And you're right, this arrangement is not sustainable." I reached down beside my chair and picked up the slim leather folder Arthur had given me. I placed it on the table with a soft thud. "What's this?" Robert asked, frowning. "More of your little drawings?" "No," I said. "This is a little something I like to call clarity." I opened the folder. "We've been talking a lot about money tonight, about success, and who provides what, so I thought it might be helpful to go over some numbers. Let's start with the trip." I slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a copy of the Amex statement. $47,382.19. A lovely trip. Simone, you have expensive taste. The thing is, you put this on the platinum card I pay for, a card linked to my primary business account. So, while you were living your best life, on your father's dime, as you thought, you were actually spending my money. The money of the burden you're married to." Simone's face went pale. "What are you talking about? That's my emergency card." "It's a corporate card for Aura Design Labs," I corrected gently. "Of which I am the founder and majority owner. You might have heard of us. We do some design work for Apple, Mercedes, a few other small companies." The silence in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Marcus let out a choked laugh. "Aura? You're telling us you own Aura, the company that's worth like billions?" "Currently valued at $3.4 billion, actually," I said, pulling out the next document. "And I own 67%. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about something a little closer to home. Robert, how's business?" Robert stared at me, his mouth slightly agape. "What do you know about my business?" "Quite a lot," I said, sliding the next folder toward him. "I know that 3 years ago, Vance Innovations was circling the drain. I know that a mysterious investment firm called Hayes Equity bought up your debt and acquired a controlling interest in your company for pennies on the dollar. Robert, you've been working for me for the last 3 years." Robert snatched the papers, his hands trembling as he read the ownership documents. His face, a mask of arrogant pride just moments before, began to crumble. The deep brown color of his skin seemed to wash out, leaving him looking gray and sick. This can't be right," he stammered. "This is some kind of trick." "It's no trick," I said. "My lawyers are very thorough. In fact, there's an emergency board meeting scheduled for 9 p.m. tonight. That's in 15 minutes. The only item on the agenda is your performance as CEO. I wonder how that's going to go. I looked at Marcus. And yours too, as VP of Marketing. By the way, your corporate keycards were deactivated an hour ago. I wouldn't bother going into the office on Monday. Marcus's smug smirk had evaporated. He looked at his father, then at me, his face a mixture of confusion and terror. Eleanor finally found her voice. It was a hoarse whisper. You're lying. This is a joke. A cruel, twisted joke. Am I, Eleanor? I asked, turning to her. My voice was still quiet. You love to talk about your investments. Your golden touch. You're with the Sterling Asset Management Group, correct? A very exclusive fund. I pushed the next file towards her. Hayes Equity acquired Sterling 2 years ago. Every brilliant trade you've made since then has been approved by a board that I control. I have a detailed summary of your portfolio right here. Or, I should say, my portfolio. According to the management agreement you signed, all assets are held by the firm. And since I own the firm, I let the sentence hang in the air. Eleanor looked like she had been struck by lightning. Her carefully constructed facade of regal superiority shattered into a million pieces. She stared at the papers, her mouth opening and closing with no sound coming out. And then, I said, my voice dropping even lower, there's the house. I saved the best for last. This beautiful home, the seat of the Vance family empire, the place where you've all been so generous, allowing me, the charity case, to have a seat at your table. I produced the final document, the deed. I bought it last year, Eleanor. Robert has been paying rent to a property management company that deposits the check into my account every month. You have all been living in my house. You've been my tenants. I leaned back in my chair. The chocolate lava cake sat untouched, melting on its plate. The silence was absolute, broken only by a soft, ragged gasp from Simone. So, to recap, I said, my voice devoid of any emotion except a profound weariness. Simone's trip was paid for by me. The company that gives this family its name and status is owned by me. The wealth you brag about, Eleanor, is managed and owned by me. And the roof over your heads is owned by me. So you were right. The arrangement is not sustainable. You called me a burden. But it seems to me the truth is the other way around. You have all been my burden. Robert finally broke. He stood up so fast his chair screeched back and crashed to the floor. Get out, he choked out, his face purple with rage and humiliation. Get out of my house. Careful, Robert, I said calmly. You're forgetting. It's my house. And you're right. It is time for someone to leave. I looked at Eleanor, Robert, and Marcus, their faces a gallery of shock and horror. I'm serving you all with a 30-day notice of eviction. My lawyer will be in touch tomorrow to arrange the details. The same lawyer, by the way, will be handling the dissolution of Vance Innovations and the liquidation of your managed assets, Eleanor. Then, I turned to my wife. Tears were streaming down her face, silent and heavy. She was looking at me like she'd never seen me before. And in a way, she hadn't. Jamal, please, she whispered. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know. That's the problem, Simone, I said. And for the first time, a sliver of the pain I had buried for so long entered my voice. You didn't know. And you never once tried to. You never once thought that maybe, just maybe, the man you married was more than what your parents saw. You never once defended me. You just stood there and let them tear me down, year after year. I wasn't waiting for you to know I had money. I was waiting for you to love me, even when you thought I didn't. I stood up, leaving the folder open on the table, a testament to their ruin. I'll let you discuss this among yourselves. I walked out of the dining room, out of the front door of my house, and didn't look back. The performance was over, the lights were on, and the illusion was gone forever. If this story reminded you that you should never judge someone by appearances, and that karma always finds a way, hit subscribe and leave a comment below. What would you have done in Jamal's position? I read every comment. Now let's see how their story ends. The immediate aftermath was a cascade of frantic, desperate actions. Arthur later told me that his office was flooded with calls the next morning. A lawyer representing Eleanor called, threatening to sue for fraud. Arthur calmly explained that every transaction was legal, documented, and ironclad. He sent them copies. They didn't call back. Robert, after being formally dismissed by the board, in a unanimous vote led by the new chairman, David Chen, tried to stage a protest at the Vance Innovations building, only to be escorted off the property by security. Marcus posted a long, rambling tirade on social media about betrayal, which was quickly deleted after Arthur's office sent him a cease and desist letter for slander. Simone called me over 100 times in the first 48 hours. I didn't answer. She left long, rambling voicemails, alternating between sobbing apologies, angry accusations, and desperate pleas for me to just talk to her. I moved into a hotel suite, a spacious, minimalist space overlooking the city that cost more per night than our old apartment's monthly rent. I needed the space. I needed the silence. About a week after the dinner, she showed up at Aura Design Labs. Keisha called me from the front desk. "Mr. Hayes, your wife is here. She's causing a bit of a scene." I went down to the lobby. Simone was standing there, looking lost and small in the vast, modern space. Her designer clothes looked out of place. Her makeup was smudged from crying. When she saw me, she rushed forward. "Jamal, we need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about, Simone," I said, keeping my distance. "Arthur has my instructions. Your lawyer can speak to him." "This isn't about lawyers. This is about us," she cried, her voice echoing slightly in the lobby. "My family. They're losing everything. My dad is a broken man. My mom won't come out of her room. You can't do this." "I'm not doing anything," I said, my voice flat. "I'm just stopping. I'm stopping the funding. I'm stopping the pretense. I'm stopping the arrangement that you all found so comfortable, the one where I was the silent, smiling fool at the end of the table." "I love you," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes again. "Doesn't that count for anything?" "Did you love me at the country club?" I asked, the question hanging between us. "Did you love me when your mother called me a charity case in front of 30 people, and you said nothing? Did you love me when your brother joked about me skipping meals to buy him a gift? Love isn't silent, Simone. It isn't passive. It's a choice. And you consistently chose them. You chose their comfort over my dignity. Now you get to live with that choice, and they get to live with the consequences." I turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the lobby of the empire I had built in secret. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. It was quick and clean, just like Arthur had promised. 6 months later. The world looked different now. I had moved out of the hotel and into a stunning penthouse apartment in the heart of the city. The one I'd had my eye on for years but kept on hold. Another piece of my life deferred for the sake of the illusion. I sold the house on Willow Creek Lane. I had no desire to live in a place so filled with bitter memories. The Vances, I heard through the grapevine, had moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment in a less fashionable part of town. Robert, unable to find work at his age with his reputation shattered, was forced into early retirement. Eleanor had to sell her jewelry and designer clothes to make ends meet. Marcus was working a commission-only sales job at a car dealership. Reality had been a brutal teacher. My life, on the other hand, had just begun. I was no longer Jamal Hayes, the struggling artist. I was Jamal Hayes, the visionary behind Aura. I was on the cover of Forbes magazine, a feature story about the ghost in the machine who had finally stepped into the light. The work was still my passion, but I was no longer hiding it. I was no longer hiding myself. One evening, I was at a gallery opening for a new artist I was sponsoring. As I was speaking with the gallery owner, a successful black woman named Dr. Alani Reed with intelligent eyes and short-cropped natural hair. I saw a familiar figure across the room. It was Simone. She looked different. Her hair was in a simple, natural afro. She was wearing a simple black dress, no logos, no flash. She was working, carrying a tray of drinks. Our eyes met. There was no anger in her gaze, no desperation, just a quiet, sad acknowledgement. She gave me a small, hesitant nod, and I nodded back. I learned later that she had gotten a job with the catering company to support herself. She had refused any further help from me or her parents, determined to make it on her own. For the first time, she was building something real. I turned back to Dr. Reed. She had noticed the exchange. "Old friend?" she asked. I considered the question for a moment. "Something like that," I replied. "Someone I used to know." "My name is Jamal Hayes. For years, I allowed others to write my story, to define my worth based on what they could see. I lived in the shadows, hoping my love would be enough to earn me the respect I already deserved. But I learned a valuable lesson. You cannot force someone to see your value. You cannot make them respect you. All you can do is know your own worth so completely and so profoundly that their opinion becomes irrelevant." I didn't destroy a family out of revenge. I simply revealed the truth. And in doing so, I didn't just reclaim my wealth or my power. I reclaimed myself. And that is a price beyond measure.